You're listening to ThunderQuack Podcast Network.
Hello, welcome back to the ThunderQuack Podcast Quarantine Zone. I am your host, of course, Michael Cohen, and with me tonight I've got a very special guest that I'm very excited about, Victor Hunter. Hey, Victor, how's it going?
Hi, Mike. Oh, I'm a special guest.
Yeah.
How lovely.
Yeah. We haven't hung out in person since many months before the actually maybe even a year before this whole pandemic situation.
Yeah, probably.
It's been a long time, right? Like it was.
I don't remember the last time we saw each other.
It was the trivia night. The trivia night.
Oh yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah. And
yeah, that was a while ago. Huh.
yeah, that was a while ago. Because Cassie was not even. I don't even think that maybe Crystal was just pregnant at the time, but you may not have known. We may have been playing that one close to the vest at the time. So,
Right.
yeah, but it's been far too long since we've hung out in person.
Yeah, it sure has.
And this was a great excuse to just ring you up on the internet phone and just talk to you about dumb stuff to distract us from the fact that the world is currently in a very quiet form of chaos. It's unique to say the least.
It's very unique. Yeah. No, that's great. What a great idea.
Yeah. So let's get right into it. Let's not talk too much about the whole COVID-19 quarantine situation. Let's just talk about fun video games, and let's start with Animal Crossing, which is currently, no surprise, taking the world by storm, because everybody is locked in their house.
Yeah.
How are you enjoying Animal Crossing so far?
The same way I've enjoyed every Animal Crossing before it.
Yeah.
It's just delightful. I pop in for an hour or so each day, make sure everybody's doing fine.
Mm-hmm.
I write a letter to Carmen the rabbit because I love her. And then I just kind of leave it. There's a lot of people who seem to think that Animal Crossing is a race.
Yes.
And miss me with that. I ain't about that life. I'm on island time, baby. Just let me relax.
It's just about, I want to be able to do all of the things that I'm able to do, and knowing that with this version, you're going to be able to basically terraform your island.
Right, yeah.
I want to get to that point so that I can start, getting in there and crafting the world the way that I want it to be.
Right.
So that's the only reason.
How do you want that world to be? What is your terraforming plan?
Yeah, you know what? When they did the Animal Crossing Direct, and they really showed us what this game was going to be, and how it was going to be different and an evolution from the past ones. They just kind of showed a standard island, which looked a lot like your standard Animal Crossing setting, and then they showed you these tools, and it's like, okay, he's digging through the cliffside and building it back up and making waterfalls and making rivers and lakes and whatnot. And I was like, okay, that's cool. That's really neat. And then they were like, yeah, and also like you can put furniture anywhere. You can just drop it anywhere you want. So you can create outside spaces.
Fantastic.
You can decorate your whole island.
Yeah.
And I was like, cool, cool. The one thing I'm really missing from this, and the one thing that I've always wanted Animal Crossing to do, is to actually shift away from the small town vibe and maybe do something that was a little bit more I like bustling metropolis sort of feel.
Oh, so you're a war criminal.
Yeah. I
You're a psychopath, and I'll never trust a single thing you ever say again. You're humanity's greatest monster.
So they showed in that direct, like, hey, if you really want to, you can like you can make streets, and you can put in sidewalks and streetlights, and you can bring a little bit of city to your island. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's really cool. I
Yeah.
I think that's what I want to do. Now that I'm playing the game, I
Mhm.
don't know that I do. I was saying to Crystal today, because she played more of it today than I did, because I was
Mhm.
working today and she was with the kids, so she put on Frozen and played video games while they were
Sure.
watching.
Yeah.
And I we were talking about it, and I was like, yeah, I just like I want I know that there's these abilities, and I want to kind of mess around with it, but
Mhm.
I don't actually know that I want to change the layout of my island that much. I'm now that
Yeah.
now that it's familiar, now that it's become second home to me, in the midst of this whole situation,
Yeah.
um, I'm kind of like, when I think about it, it's like it's not necessarily that I want to change it. I think I just want to add infrastructure to it, right?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I have one area, that's sort of towards the the northeast, of my island, that
Mhm.
there's one, like the cliff levels can go up 2 tiers, right? And there's sort of,
Yeah.
it goes up one, and there's a waterfall coming off of a stream, and then you follow that further up, and then there's another tier, of
Yeah.
cliffs on top of
Where you
that
get to
one.
the inexplicable beginning of the river
Yeah,
that I guess is just feeding from the ocean.
I guess so. It's just bubbling up.
Yeah.
Somehow there's an aquifer, of
Yeah.
fresh water there for those freshwater fish to live in.
Totally.
Um, and exactly, it ends in that, but then sort of off to the west from that plateau is another plateau that's
Mhm.
not that far off, and there's kind of just like this little gully, valley, whatever, between them. And I'm like,
Sure.
it would be really cool if I could put a bridge between that, right?
Absolutely.
So that
You
you could
got
just go
yourself
up there.
a spectacle rock from A Link to the Past.
There you go.
You've got
Exactly.
a
Yeah.
yeah.
And so, like, now that I'm, like I said, now that I'm familiar with with the terrain of my island, I'm thinking in those terms of like, oh, what cool stuff could I do with it the way that
Yeah.
it is, rather than thinking about, more so like kind of tearing it all down and starting from scratch. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It's been a great experience. I love it. Like you said, it's the same experience that it is with every Animal Crossing.
Yeah.
But there are some games where I think that's kind of all it needs to be, right?
Absolutely.
What are you gonna do to Animal Crossing to really make that game that much
I'm
better?
I'm excited because with New Leaf, did you play New Leaf or
Mhm.
City Folk? Yeah.
I did play, New Leaf. I
Okay.
don't know that I played City Folk. That was on the DS, or
That's the Wii.
that's the no. So I didn't play that one.
Yeah. Yeah. So like City Folk introduced the idea of having a like a main strip where a lot of your features are and things
Yeah,
like that. And then New Leaf really streamlined it. And did a really good job of giving you a main street
yeah,
that's right across the train tracks, and you can see right from the beginning all of the potential that your main street has, because you see all the buildings, but they're
yeah,
all closed, like they're none of them have shops in them yet. And as you play, you slowly get to see what those shops are going to be and who fills those spaces, and as those spaces fill, you get more and more features. And then for all the stuff that doesn't fit there, there's the stuff like the Roost, which was like a public works project that you then put in your main town. And now they've completely streamlined it where everything you get to place on your own in your own town. So you could make a main street if you wanted to, but you can also just sort of make them scattered around like you would in a in the original or Wild World or something like that. So I think this really strikes a really great balance of that. And it also, because you don't see the main street from the beginning, I have no idea what features are going to come up. I don't know what shops there are. And I'm really excited to find that out. Not so excited that I need to play for a million hours a day, but enough that I want to pop in and see everybody and check what's going on. And I'm finding it very meditative.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of just trying to go in and check something off every day, right?
Sure, yeah.
Yesterday I finished paying down my second mortgage, so
Right.
I haven't logged in yet today, but when I do, I'll have another room in my house that I can start decorating. So that's exciting. And that's kind of my thing, is that like every morning I want to wake up and have like something new to go in there with. Tomorrow morning, the resident services center will be an actual building and not just a tent.
Yeah.
So
same.
Yeah, so like it's just kind of, and I think that they actually, the designers paced that out appropriately, so that there really is, you can go in and you can play for maybe about an hour or 2 hours a day, and crank something out, right? Depending on how efficient you want to be or where your focus is, and and I think that's how it's intended to be played. There are a lot of people who are out there playing it with time travel and nonsense like that, which is of course cheating. There's no other way around it. Look, hey, I've been playing Animal Crossing games, and I haven't played every single one, obviously, but I have been playing them since the GameCube, and since that first one, and was keen on it when it was originally supposed to be on the Nintendo 64. So like this game is this franchise is very near and dear to me, and one of the elements of the franchise that is ingrained in the way that I play it is Rossetti the Mole, and I know that some of these youngsters probably they're not really all that keen on Rossetti coming in and telling them how they're supposed to be playing their game. Apparently there's a libertarian attitude towards that, but I honestly think like Rossetti is doing God's work by making sure that you don't mess around with the clock or exit without saving or whatnot. And he doesn't take lightly to cheating, and neither do I. So even though Rossetti is not present in the game from the outset, I choose to play it as if he's always watching.
His spirit lingers. He left a lasting impression on you and I both.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that I didn't purposely turn off the GameCube version a few times just to see what he would say.
Of course.
But they also take that into consideration, and he comments on that.
Yeah.
And like Rossetti was very much one of my first meta experiences.
Yeah.
I hadn't played Metal Gear Solid yet. I hadn't played Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem yet. Yeah. So I loved Rossetti.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, acknowledging that you're a player and it's a game and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. It's funny you bring up the other two games that I would have brought up as well. You said that, like you said, first meta, and I was like, yeah, Eternal Darkness is probably the one that sticks out the most for me, because that game messes with you. For people who aren't familiar with Eternal Darkness, it's essentially like like a Cthulhu, like old gods sort of storyline.
Yeah, it's a very Lovecraft influenced action game that definitely gets a little postmodern on you.
Yeah. It pulls some tricks on you. You have like a
Yeah,
sanity meter, and when that sanity
yeah,
meter fills up, something will happen to your character. That's essentially how
yeah.
you die. And and there are times in the game where it kind of forces you into a situation where it's like, oh well, you can't escape from how insane this is. And
Yeah.
when it does that, it has a few tricks up its sleeve that
Yeah.
I'm not gonna spoil because I really hope that Eternal Darkness does eventually get a port to the Switch or to
I
just to
I
anything.
don't even know who could do that.
Right? It is one of those
I
things.
don't know who would be able to do
Yeah,
that.
it's very much like Rogue Squadron for me, where it's like I know that
Sure.
those three games are kind of, well, four if you count the Naboo Starfighter one,
Hmm.
Battle for Naboo. I they're kind of trapped because they're in a
Yeah.
weird limbo of like, well, they're Lucas Arts
Yeah.
games.
But Factor 5 sure don't exist.
Yeah,
And
exactly. And it's like,
and
so
for all intents and purposes, neither does Silicon Knights.
yeah, yeah. So these things I think kind of get lost in rights
Yeah.
limbo until it seems like until time a certain amount of time elapses,
Yeah.
and then it becomes fair game to move it around and that sort of thing.
I
They just announced this morning that Episode 1 Racer is
Yeah.
coming to the
Oh,
Nintendo
I'm so
Switch with
excited.
improved controls. Because I'm pretty sure that I have Episode 1 Racer on the PlayStation 4, but I think it's a PS3 classic port,
Oh yeah.
if that makes any sense.
Yep.
I
Yeah.
the controls are just as kind of clunky as they were
Sure.
on the Nintendo 64. It felt more at home on the Nintendo 64 because we didn't know any better.
Because
But
everything was janky.
yeah, but I'm really hoping that improved controls on the Switch means that I'll be able to pop those nunchucks off the Joy-Cons, hold them in that nunchuck mode, and
That'd be great.
use the analogs to
Yeah.
power the separate pods, because that
Yeah.
was the mode in the N64 version. If you plugged in the two controllers,
Right. Yeah.
you could play with two controllers, like one in each hand, and control each pod independently,
Yeah. That's pretty rad.
the way it was meant to be played,
Yeah.
just like the arcade game. So I'm that is super exciting, and I will definitely
Yeah.
play that on day one. But
Yeah.
yeah, Rogue Squadron
What
is.
was the other Star Wars guy that was announced this morning?
It was shadow dropped, like it came out today, and that was a Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Academy.
Right.
Yeah, so the actual full title on that game, if you want to add all of the omitted titles, is Star Wars: Dark Forces: Jedi Knight 2: Jedi Academy. That's the full title of that
Yes.
game.
Great.
Because it's a
It's
sequel to Star Wars Jedi Knight, Jedi Outcast. It's so obnoxious. It's so ridiculous because it's actually like,
Listen, as a Square Enix fan,
yeah, fair enough.
I have a thing or two to say about absurd game titles.
Yeah. Yeah, the lineage of those characters, of Kyle Katarn in particular, is a little bit ridiculous. But yeah, so that's out. I actually never played that one. I played Jedi Outcast on the GameCube of all things.
Right.
And I was very close when they announced that was coming out. I was very close to buying it, and then remembered vaguely what the gameplay was like, and was like, that's not gonna have aged particularly well. It's like I TIE Fighter and X-Wing,
Sure.
which I know are beloved games, and
Yeah,
absolutely
absolutely.
Rogue Squadron wouldn't exist without those games first. Like that's
Yeah.
a direct evolution.
Yeah.
But the people who try and tell me that those games play better than Rogue Squadron 2, Rogue Leader. It's like get out of my face. Like it's no contest. And when those years ago now, when those became available again to play on PC, I was like, did you hear that? That's the sound of all of the nostalgia bubbles popping from everybody who hasn't been able to play those games for over a decade. Playing them again and going like, oh yeah, PC controls were not super sophisticated back then.
But okay, so I'm the sort of person who doesn't really care if controls have quote unquote aged well. Yeah. Like and I'm feeling this today because I absolutely bought Panzer Dragoon Remake as soon as I possibly could.
Yeah.
And saw a lot of people complaining about controls. And like to test it, I went back and popped the original in my Saturn, and I was like, no, this controls the way Panzer Dragoon always has.
Yeah.
Like this is exactly what this game is. So just in like a broader sense, what is your approach to playing old games? Like I guess I don't really understand the need that everyone else seems to have to modernize control schemes for everything.
So if I'm gonna play the classic version of something, I want to play it with that controller, right? So if something's being ported over to the PlayStation 4, then I want it to feel, it doesn't have to feel exactly like a modern game, because I think with a lot of ports that would be nearly impossible without remaking, right?
Sure.
But when it's like, oh, well, stuff is we kind of just mapped it the best that we could. That never really works for me. Even something as simple as like Shadow of the Colossus with the PlayStation 4 remake of it, the slight improvements that they made to it, because you are on just a slightly different controller, I feel like we're smart. They left the things that I think a lot of people complain about with that game, and they gave you the ability to swap it back, which I think is the kind of happy medium for everybody.
Yeah.
But that said, like I have no problem with if I was presented with an opportunity to play Shadow of the Colossus on the PlayStation 2, I would play it happily and have no problem with the fact that the PlayStation 2 controller it's not quite as comfortable. It's not quite as sensitive and responsive as the PS4 DualShock is. But like with something like we're talking about Episode 1 Racer, that was originally at home on a very unique controller, right? So to bring that over, when I played it on the PlayStation 4, I was like, this isn't really like, I'm not feeling it. Like I probably played it for about an hour and then put it down and never picked it back up. But I'm hoping that these what they're saying about like, oh, you know, they've adapted the control scheme to the Nintendo Switch. I'm like, okay, cool. Like let's see what that means, and I'm willing to jump in for that. But most of the time, if it is something older, I would prefer to just break out the previous, like that original version of it, or have a controller that at least approximates it, right? When I play Smash Brothers, I can play it with the Joy-Cons, but I would much rather play it with my GameCube controllers.
Sure.
And I have no problem being tethered if that's what it takes. And if they were to release Rogue Squadron on the Nintendo Switch, if they were to finally figure out how to do GameCube virtual console stuff and start bringing those games out, I would want to use GameCube controllers for it, because the GameCube controller had its own little sort of quirks and nuances to it, with that gigantic A button and the analog triggers, right? So like the analog triggers are actually an integral part of the control scheme in Rogue Squadron. I can't
Yeah,
imagine playing that game without analog triggers.
for sure.
And the Switch doesn't have analog triggers, right? So,
Hmm. Yeah,
you
I
know,
don't know what
there's
that
got to be a
workaround would
way
be.
to figure that out in order for that to work for me, because being
Yeah,
able to control the velocity of your starfighter is everything in that game, and
yeah,
and those analog triggers were the key to it. Like that slowly pressing it down until it clicks and knowing, okay, it's clicked. I'm as fast as I'm gonna go. Um,
yeah,
and
yeah.
having that sort of feedback, so that, because with PlayStation especially, I guess less so with the DualShock 4s, but certainly on the PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 3, I would always find myself just like white knuckle gripping those controllers, because there just isn't a lot of bounce to the triggers, right?
No, you have there's very little feedback for the
Yeah.
pressure sensitivity in those controllers. Like that was it was always an issue with MGS2 and MGS3
Hmm.
because there are especially in MGS3 there are certain CQC moves that only happen when you've pushed a button down to the max,
Yeah.
but sometimes you don't know you're doing that, so all of a sudden you've slit a guy's throat that you were only trying to hold up,
Yeah.
or in MGS2 you've shot when you were trying to put your gun away, kind of thing. So
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Like I do like jumping into old games, and I love the Nintendo Online stuff
mhm.
with the access to all these
Uh,
very weird
I
titles for the NES and the Super NES.
I like that they're weird.
Oh, I love
I'm
it.
really happy about that.
It's yeah. I mean, I have the NES Classic and the Super NES Classic, so I have all of the games, not all of them. I mean, like, obviously there are titles that I wish were on those, but
Sure.
um, I have so many of the games that I would want to spend time with on those consoles, and in exactly the way that I'm talking about, I can play them the way that they felt back then, because you've got an NES paddle, you've got a Super Nintendo controller,
Sure.
they're perfect in approximating that. As to me at least, I don't know. I'm sure that there are like speedrunners and
Sure.
stuff that are like, that frame's in the wrong spot, but I don't know.
Ah,
So
yes, that frame is in the wrong
yeah,
spot.
exactly. Like I said, I don't know. Like, I just play video games for funsies.
Yeah.
I but yeah, for the Nintendo Online stuff, it's just kind of every month popping in there and being like, well, I wonder what weird thing they're gonna give me this month. Is it gonna be some sort of Japanese tennis game I've never seen, or something with
Yeah.
a frisbee and mechanical
Yeah.
dogs, or like, I don't know.
Except except they also haven't really kept to any kind of schedule. So
Yeah, this is true.
I don't know. Boy, yeah, I could do 3 hour long conversation about Nintendo's online selection and virtual console endeavors, and I have lots and lots of thoughts about
Yeah.
those.
It's
Uh,
the one thing to me that is very odd, and I think it's because they want to roll these things out one at a time, is like, we know with virtual console on the Wii and the Wii U, that like N64 games weren't a problem. Game Boy games weren't a problem. Like, let's get that stuff on the Switch already. Like, I don't, it was baffling to me at the time when it launched, and it was almost a deal breaker for me when the Switch launched, because I remember, like, I waffled. I went back and forth of, like, they announced that thing and I was like 100% in. There's no way I'm not getting this. And then they had that awful, very Japanese investor presentation that was like, everybody was like, yeah, this is going to be like a PlayStation or an Xbox keynote at E3. And they came out and they were like, please be excited for all of the features coming to the Nintendo Switch. And then they just kept snapping their fingers every 30 seconds. And by the end of that, I was so, I don't want to say underwhelmed, but just kind of disappointed, in particular at the lack of mention of virtual console. because I think the rumors going into it, if I remember right at the time, were they're going to announce Virtual Console. It's going to be everything they've done before, and GameCube's going to be included for the first time. And so I think I overhyped myself, and and then that ended up falling short. So I was like, screw you, Nintendo. I actually remember there was a post that I made on Facebook that you responded to, where I was like, Nintendo mastering the art. So I'm paraphrasing. It's not exactly this, but like Nintendo mastering the art of tricking you into paying for a game that you've already bought 6 times. And and you're like, what do you mean exactly? And I was like, well, just like they're gonna make us pay for Mario, like Super Mario Brothers again, right? Like that's kind of what it felt like at the time. That was the vibe that they were putting out. And then a year later or whatever, Nintendo Online becomes a thing, and they go, with Nintendo Online you get this stuff, and it was like, okay, there you go. That should have launched with the console. For whatever reason it didn't, which I'm sure was just Nintendo having a hard time figuring out how to do online infrastructure, because they just they can't seem to wrap their heads around people want to play. One person in one location wants to play a video game with a human being in a different location. You mean like on a different part of the couch? It's like, no, in like a different place. Oh, so like in a different room in the house. No, like a different house, maybe a different city, maybe even a different country. They're like, but what if that person's a pervert? And you're like, well, that's the risk that we all take when we go online. That's just kind of, I think that users are used to managing that themselves. Nintendo still wants to kind of hold our hands a little bit on that, and has a hard time with online as a result. But they finally figured it out. They gave it to us, and they were like, you have a bunch of old video games to make this seem like it's worth it, because you're not playing Call of Duty or Destiny on your Nintendo Switch. So why do you need to pay for online? It's kind of unclear. I mean, every once in a while a game like Animal Crossing comes out that makes it worthwhile, but
completely.
Yeah. I don't know. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on? I know Jason, who is in the audience at the moment, wanted to know if you have any Xbox recommendations, because I only ever talk about Nintendo and PlayStation stuff.
Xbox recommendations. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Xbox One is currently the best place to play the Final Fantasy 13 trilogy. They are backwards compatible. The man, they just look amazing. They load faster than anywhere else. They are just gorgeous. I'm jealous of Xbox owners, because that is a trilogy that deserves some love, and it is currently the best place to play those 3 games. And say whatever you want about Final Fantasy 13, unfortunately you're wrong. And that trilogy is worth playing.
Cool. 13 is one of the ones that I think 12 just kind of made me realize, like, oh, I like Final Fantasy as a franchise. I just don't necessarily always like playing the games.
Sure.
Because like with FF12, if you could cut that story down to 2 hours and present it to me in a way where I could just sit and enjoy the story with those characters, I would happily digest that. But
well, that's just Star Wars.
Yes, I am fully aware. But yeah, like managing systems and subsystems, and then the subsystems within the systems. It's I have fun with it for about 5 or 6 hours, and then generally trail off and never pick it back up. So I'm gonna stick to Final Fantasy VI and Final Fantasy VIII, and I'm gonna play 7.
Those don't have systems within systems within systems.
No, but here's the thing about 8. You can
eight is the
I know.
most.
I know. I'm fully aware of the like Guardian Force draw system nonsense.
Yeah.
But here's the thing about Final Fantasy VIII. When the first time that I played it, when I was like, I think I was like 14 or 15, I was a dumb kid that didn't know how to play Final Fantasy games. It was the first Final Fantasy game I ever played. I just mashed the X button and square button respectively when the time called for it. If I died, I would just go grind, and then come back and then just mash buttons as fast as possible to try and get through that. So you can absolutely just play Final Fantasy VIII and Final Fantasy VI without being smart about it at all. Whereas I find 12, it's like 12 plays itself, and you are just the overseer. Final Fantasy 12 is Final Fantasy middle manager. It's like you're just saying like, hey, you guys go fight the monsters. I'll just sit back and make sure you're fighting the monsters correctly.
I'm gonna say that's reductive, and I think you know that.
Of course it is. That was my experience personally with it, because I just don't want to invest that much time in the complexity of those systems. So I don't know what 13 was like, but I never quite got there because
13 was nothing like 12.
Yeah, that's
it's very much. I think you would actually quite enjoy it. There's very little in terms of like character management beyond like character growth, like putting points into which job you want a character to excel in, and it's quite streamlined to the point where a lot of people hated how streamlined it was. But if you want a story that just kind of takes you on a ride and lets you fight some battles between each cutscene, I think you would actually really enjoy 13.
That sounds more in the vein of 10 than 12.
Very much so.
Closer
yes,
to that.
Absolutely.
But I'm sure with better voice acting is what I was gonna say, but FF10 is such a conundrum to me because the voice actors involved in that game are top notch. Like you have some of the I think the best voice actors, certainly that were working at that time. And
sure. Well, we know who you love the most.
Yeah, exactly. So for people who don't understand that reference, James Arnold Taylor played Tidus, the main character in Final Fantasy X, and there is a very famous scene of Tidus laughing, and it's very cringy, and it's like you watch it and you're like, there's no way that this wasn't a choice in the room.
Yes, that's what I don't understand. It never bothered me. I didn't understand I didn't understand that there was a problem with it until the internet told me that that's what was happening. But in context, just like if you're playing the game and you get to that scene, you know exactly why it is the way it is. It is 100% a choice.
Yeah.
And it's right there. It spells it out for you. So I never understood why that blew up the way it did.
I think that's just a meme culture thing, right? It's like when our mutual friend Andrew will tell us that he actually only understands a pop culture reference because it was referenced in The Simpsons and not because
Right.
of the actual
Yeah.
thing. I think like that's
Yeah.
kind of how meme culture works, is that people don't necessarily know the thing. They know the reference to the thing, and that's one of those. Because, yeah, I mean, James Arnold Taylor is a great
So-
voice actor, and if he wanted to give you a believable laugh, he'd give you a believable laugh.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sherston says, "See, that's your problem, listening to the internet." And yeah, that's right. Just don't listen to the internet. But except for this, you should listen to this, and if we say something, then you should probably, take it to heart. But other
in
internet,
Andrew's defense, The Simpsons is loaded with like boomer references that there's no way
yeah.
anyone older than 40 would understand at this point in time. So
yeah, yes, absolutely.
there's
But
there's some deep cuts in The Simpsons.
I'm glad you said that, because when Andrew listens to this, Andrew will never listen to this. I don't want his feelings to be hurt. Somebody's gonna snip out that one part and send it to him. Cool. You know what? I think let's wrap it up there.
Sure.
I gotta go finish cleaning the house while everybody else sleeps.
Yeah.
So that Crystal can wake up to a nice clean home. And we can all maintain our sanity just a little longer.
Yeah.
But thank you very much, Victor, for joining me.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure. Anytime.
Well, I mean, you say that, and I'm gonna wear out my welcome with this stuff, because I know we're gonna be stuck in this situation.
We're in it for the long haul.
For at least, I'm gonna say at least like 8 more weeks. That's my gut telling me that it's gonna be probably June before we see the light of day.
That sounds about.
Yeah, and that means that there are a lot more weeks ahead of us to jump in and do these live streams. I think actually next week I might tone it down a little bit. When I initially came up with this plan, it was like I wanted to put something out there to help people get through the couple of weeks that I think we were all expecting, the maybe 2 or 3 weeks that we were expecting when we went into this. But this is a really heavy pace, along with recording ThunderQuack every Monday, and then Rebel Cells every Tuesday. So it was like every night of the week. I was like, okay, I can do that for a couple of weeks, but I think that I might reduce it down to 2 streams next week. And obviously I'll make a decision before tomorrow night, and I'll announce it there, which days we'll be back. But that said, I will definitely be bringing you back on, because I'm gonna cycle through my Rolodex pretty quick. I'm already hard pressed to think of people that will answer my call when I ask them to come be on a podcast. So, but I'm sure that we'll have lots of exciting things to talk about in the future. Totally. You know what? Let's preview now and say the next time that we do this, let's talk about some anime stuff, because that's something that Amanda and I don't cover very often on ThunderQuack. We can talk about some old school anime, sort of like our top 3 favorites.
I love these wacky cartoons.
Yeah.
These things are wild.
Yeah, this crazy Japanimation.
Have you heard about this stuff?
It's pretty nuts. And I like it a lot. So, cool. Well, thank you, Victor. Thank you to our 2. Actually, we have 4 concurrent viewers at the moment. So that's exciting.
Whoa!
That's actually it's not the highest. Our first stream had 7, but there's a couple extra people in there tonight. So thank you to everybody who's been listening live, and thank you to everybody who's listening later on podcasts. On podcast services and whatnot. Of course, the ThunderQuack podcast is the official podcast of ThunderQuack.com. Go to ThunderQuack.com to check out all the other great podcasts in the ThunderQuack podcast network. And you can support us in 3 ways. First, go to the podcast service of your choice and leave a rating, a review, an upsy thumbs, a star. I don't know what all of these things are. I just use iTunes.
On the Miiverse, they're Yaz.
Yeah, leave a yeah. And second, you can go to store.thunderquack.com and pick up some merchandise and sport some really super niche geek stuff if you so choose. People really like the designs that I did for the Cartoon Afternoon. I did Blatherskite and Let's Get Dangerous in reference to Gizmo Duck and Darkwing Duck, and they're very 90s, looking like the Saved by the Bell logo, and people really like to get them on stickers, which are very cheap. So maybe that's a recommendation. Go over there, store.thunderquack.com, and check that out. And of course, last but not least, you can go to patreon.com/thunderquack and kick in with your monthly pledge of support and get some cool rewards in the process. And we appreciate everybody who does support us over on Patreon. And Jason gets the shout out because he's live in the audience again tonight, and he's a Patreon producer over on Patreon. So thank you. Woo! In particular to Jason, but thank you to everybody who supports us.
Jason.
Over on Patreon. You guys are awesome. That is it for tonight's broadcast. We will be back tomorrow night. I think with Paul Herman. I got to double check with him tonight and say, hey, you going to come on and talk some Star Wars with me? And maybe we're going to finally get into it, and I'm going to call him out on his vitriol spewing against The Last Jedi. And I'm gonna have him defend himself live on the internet, and we'll see how that goes. Maybe we might just end up talking about The Mandalorian or something. But that's it for tonight. Thank you guys for listening, and we will catch you tomorrow night.